just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again. Hello everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Lonnie Jones' life story and what God's done for me. And He's done a lot for me. You can look around behind me. I'm fortunate enough that I play several instruments in the music field. I've always loved bluegrass and country music, and I got a banjo and a guitar and a bass and stuff like that in the background. And God, if it wasn't for God, I couldn't play any of that stuff, and I'm very grateful to Him for that. And we're going to talk in this episode. See, God in my life, in my earlier episodes and up to now, even the 6th episode, God hasn't done that much for me that I'm paying any attention to. He's doing a world for me, but I'm not knowing God's there in the middle of all of it. Later on, you will see how, no one can imagine why and how God came into my life like He has in these days as of right now. But we are broadcasting tonight from Larry's Garage at 549 East Maple Street, Madison, Tennessee. And I've owned this place for 20 years now. We've always had music here, and this is the stage we're sitting on here, and the beautiful painting in the stage and everything in the background. God helped me have this. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't have any of this. So we'll get on to, and again, just remember that God's doing things for you in the daytime, nighttime, anytime, all the time. And you may not be paying attention to it. So make a long story short, He's there at all times. If you got a question to ask, it's answers right there. Trust me, the answer's right there. So we're going to talk a little bit about me going to high school now, because I'm pretty much out of the grade school, and I'm going to, I think they call them freshmen. I'm going to high school now in Dixon, Tennessee. And it's a pretty good sized school. I don't know how many people are in there, but it's 1957. And I'm going to school there and trying to work on the farm. In the meantime, along about now, my daddy is getting what they call rheumatoid arthritis. And he's getting to where if it comes a rain or it gets in the wintertime, he can't hardly move. He can't get around. He can't do good. So in 1957, Daddy begins to get the rheumatoid arthritis, and the farming gets become lesser and lesser, because I'm going to school now in the 9th grade, and I'm not around because I'm in town. I'm not close to the farm or anything, so I'm less active on the farm, and Dad can only do so much with this rheumatoid arthritis he's got, which is in the early stages as of right now. And to make a long story short, any of you that knows anything about rheumatoid arthritis, it's bad. It's bad news. So I'm going to high school now, and I'm in the 9th grade. It's 1957, and I'm floating along, working on the farm, doing the same things I've been doing all these other years, all my years in the past. Doing every year is the same. Nothing changes much on the farm, unless you have a new pig or a new calf or whatever you new. Very little few things you have new, maybe a little yellow chicken or something. I know you might have some of that, but nothing much changes on the farm. And so I'm going to school, and they have football games now. I'm getting introduced to the city life, and city life is considerably different than the country farm life. And of course, I get introduced, and I get into the city. I get introduced to a pool table pretty quick. It don't take too long to get introduced to a pool table. And of course, wasn't big enough, or I didn't feel like I was big enough to play football, but I loved football. And when we'd have football games, the bus would come around and pick us up and carry us to the games, and then carry us back home that night and everything. And that's when I became the freshman. Well, I was doing pretty good in school, but I was being occupied an awful lot with the farm, with Dad being not in as good shape as he was in. And so anyway, school was sort of going along there, and I remember some of the things I remember. We played football, and our football field was north and south, and 70 Highway was right underneath one of the south ends of the field goal. So when they would kick a field goal, it would go over the field, over through the field goal and over 70 Highway. And actually, and right on the other side of 70 Highway, guess what was over there? A deer dip. I don't know that that was the name of it, but they had a little deer dip over there. They had I believe they had a roller ring over there as well. But they'd have to go across 70 Highway sometimes and get that football and bring it back into the game, because back in those days we didn't have 40 or 50 football laying around. So they had to keep up with the football. So they'd kick the field goal on that end and it'd cross 70 Highway. Because 70 is running east and west, and the ball field was running north and south. So on the south end, when they kick a field goal, he'd cross 70 Highway or go over to the deer dip. I remember those things. Of course, another thing I remember my first girlfriend I was ever in love with, or at least I thought I was in love with. But her name was Reba Lowe. I'll never forget her. Never forget the name, Reba Lowe. She was probably the prettiest thing in the freshman class, probably. At least I thought she was anyway. Well, she lived in town. She was a city girl, but she was very friendly, and being a country boy didn't bother her any. But of course that couldn't last too long, and the reason that couldn't last too long is I lived where if you went anywhere, you almost had to ride a mule to get there. I didn't have a car. In 1957, I didn't have a car. Now we had an old 39 Chevrolet ton-and-a-half truck, which that's the truck pulled upside the house that I walked the planks on to put the water in the still. Don't y'all forget. Now you got to go back to another episode to understand this, all this stuff. But my daddy had a 1939 Chevrolet ton-and-a-half pickup truck, and we haul what they call cordwood on that. We cut cordwood during the day, and we would carry that to Wrigley. So that was part of the school thing, going to school and then cutting wood and selling it. And I'll get into the cordwood a little bit further here too, because that's very important part of my life, was cutting cordwood and pulling a cross-cut saw, and then finally getting a chainsaw. So, to make a long story short, let's get back to Reba Lowe. We don't want to forget Reba. She was my first love. She fell for me for whatever reason. God help me, who in the world knows. But why do they fall for me anyway? Who in the world knows? I don't know. But that's the way it goes. Hey, that's a childhood in the fast lanes, all I can tell you. So anyway, Reba and I we were big buddies in school, and we just thought the world of each other. Well, came a time when and I knew that I was going to have to carry out on a date, and there was no way in the world I'd carry out on a date. I had nothing to carry out on a date with. So it was pretty much stuck in school, and was going to be about the end of it. And I knew that, and of course she didn't know what my situation was down in the country with Dad being getting ill arthritis and not having a vehicle to drive, because I was too young to drive. When I was going to school, I wasn't old enough to really drive anyway and get driver's license, because I believe I went my first year in school. I believe I was 16 when I went in the first grade. I mean into to freshman. I believe I was 1957, and it's when I went in to. So at any rate, I didn't have anything to carry on a date or anything with. So a good friend of mine I went to school with all this time, his name was Billy Dunnigan. Well, he had access to a car to drive, and he was a year older than I was, maybe almost 2 years older than I was, and he was a good friend of mine. So probably till this day, he thinks he might have took her away from me, but he didn't take her away from me. I gave her up. I had no choice. It was me without a car or him with one. So you may think he would win out over those reasons, but I actually talked to her about that I didn't have a car. And Billy was a good guy, and he had a car. And that's sort of how I lost Reba Lowe, is I lost her to Billy Dunnigan, which I instigated that to happen, because I knew that I was going to get nowhere. I was pretty well done, because it was time we went out on some dates and I had nothing to drive, unless she wanted to ride the rear end of a mule. I don't think she wanted to do that. Plus, I got that mule town, but that wasn't going to happen either. So that was my love life pretty much in my freshman year. Well, needless to say, you can tell I've got a great education, because I had to quit at the end of the 9th grade because Daddy was unable to continue running the farm. We had 128 acres down there, and we had been doing all this hay and all the potatoes and all the sorghum, and all that had pretty much come to an end. So we wasn't able to do all those things much anymore. So I got to where I was big enough, of course, at that time, to harness a mule. And if nobody's ever harnessed a mule, you don't even know what I'm talking about. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a lot of chains and a lot of leather, and it weighs somewhere around 75 pounds when you pick it all up at one time and throw it up over the back of a mule. Well, I got big enough I was able to do that by standing on a piece of wood of some kind Daddy made for me to stand on. I could stand on that and throw that harness up over there. Well, most people don't even know what a horse collar is anymore. You don't know what hanes are, I'm sure of that. Doubt if you know what a bridle is. But that's neither here nor that's just part of the harness that goes on a mule. And so I was able to start harnessing the mules. Well, we were still cutting cordwood. This cordwood started helping us make more money, because he'd quit making whiskey. He wasn't able to farm much anymore, and we couldn't pull a cross cut anymore much. So Daddy ended up getting an old Clinton chainsaw, weighed about 40 pounds. Heaviest thing you ever seen in your life, but that thing would cut a log in two in a hurry. So he got this old chainsaw, and to cut a tree down, this old Clinton chainsaw, you would have to hold the carburetor, push a button, hold the carburetor straight up, and turn the saw over to saw a tree down. That carburetor had to stay straight up, because if you turn it over, it would flood. So you had the carburetor. Back in those days, they didn't know how to make them any other way at that time. So this is 1957 when we finally got us a chainsaw. Until that time, we cut all our wood with cross-cut saws and axes. And there's a little story about an axe. I've had an axe stuck that deep up in my foot, and I didn't go to the doctor. We went to the house, soaked a bed sheet in kerosene, wrapped my foot up in it, put it back in the shoe. Next morning, and went right back to the woods. No stitches, no nothing. And almost all the blade of that axe was up in my foot. Started up about the ball of my foot and went back to my heel. So anyway, if you think things hurt, just think of that. And nothing will hurt you when you get stuck. Now, trust me. But this, all I've done, put some kerosene around. Kerosene would keep it from getting sore. It would even help it stop bleeding. It would help it get well. Now, how in the world kerosene did stuff like that, I don't know, but that's how it did that. So anyway, we were cutting cordwood, and we were carrying this cordwood on that old 39 Chevrolet 2.5 truck. We'd carry about 2.5 rick at a time, all we could carry down there. And at that time, and cordwood is hardwood, and that's what they make briquettes out of, like charcoal briquettes. That's what they make out of. It's hardwood. And we were cutting oak, hickory, anything that was a hardwood, we would cut that and carry it down to Wrigley, Tennessee. And most of you don't know where Wrigley, Tennessee's at. That's on right off 100 Highway, right below Lyles, Tennessee. It was where Wrigley's at, and it's off in a big hollow. And that hollow was full of cordwood as far as you can see, one side and up the other. And they throwing that stuff on this big belt. And it was going through there and cutting them into pieces about that long right there. It had to be a certain length, which is 52 inches. We got all $6 a rick, a cord. There's a difference in a rick and a cord. Most of you don't care what I'm saying. You can care less what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. But this is part of my life that I know that you don't know. A cord is 4 foot high and 8 foot long, and no less than 48 inches long. Back then they called a cord 52 inches long, but they can get by with 48 inches long sticks, 4 foot high, 8 foot long. That's a cord. Half of that is a rick. In case you don't know the difference between a rick and a cord, half of that's a rick. So when you buy a rick of firewood, you're going to get firewood about 18 inches long, and you're going to get it's going to be 8 foot long, and it's going to be 4 foot high. That's going to be a rick of firewood. That's what that's going to be. 2 of those is a cord, and there's a lot of difference in a cord and a rick. Twice as much in a cord as is a rick. And I know that a lot of you out there knows exactly what I'm talking about, but a lot of you have no clue to what I'm talking about. But I want to tell you how it was to build this country into what it became. And that's what it took, working on farms and people staying up all hours, days and nights, to make things happen. But back to the cordwood, we cut cordwood till Daddy just about cut cordwood, couldn't do anything anymore. And I had to quit in the 9th grade. After I made it through the 9th grade, I quit school. So you're sitting here looking at a guy with a 9th grade education, as far as book-wise goes. But let me tell you something. I got a whole lot more than 9th grade education other ways. There's more ways to get an education than one. There's more things to get education about than one. So let me tell you about Daddy, a little bit more about Daddy and his arthritis. My oldest brother at that time, his wife was a nurse in Houston, Texas. And my brother, oldest brother at the time, he had just retired from the service after, I believe he was in the service, if I'm not wrong, 34 years. I believe he was in the service. He had just retired, and he took over the management of a Western Auto, which they don't have a Western Auto. Radio flyers. Anybody know what a radio flyer wagon is? Well, I do. Anyway, he was a manager there at the Western Auto store, and she was a registered nurse at a hospital. So they talked Daddy in to leaving my stepmother with her. And she went back to town and stayed with her brother. And my daddy went down to Houston, Texas, and stayed with my brother. Left here on a train. Now, he left here on a train in a wheelchair, drawn up in a knot. He went to Houston, Texas. They put him through all these sauna baths and all this stuff, all this different exercises, and put him in all these different sauna things. And in 6 months, my daddy came back and he could buck dance. He looked like, when he left here, he looked like he was 65 years old. He come back, he looked like he was 40 and could dance. And he was a great dancer. My daddy was a great buck dancer and clogger, or whatever you want to call him. Because over at the old school where I went to school at, those 5 years, those 8 grades at one school at Hillcrest, that old 2-room schoolhouse, the third Saturday night of every month for 52 years, I believe it was, they had a square dance there. And they used to say, back before Daddy quit making whiskey, he would bootleg whiskey there at that square dance, the third Saturday night of every month. And he would get in there and dance, and with the best of them. Well, He got tied up in a knot with arthritis, and he came back from Houston, Texas. He could walk in there and dance with the best of them again. 6 months later, he was right back in the same shape he was when he left here going to Houston, Texas again. And let me tell you another real sad and fast story. And it works in human life just like it works with animals. Now, my stepmother loved cats. Loved cats. We had houses full of cats. Had cat hair flying everywhere. I can't stand a cat. But whatever, that's neither here. That's yesterday's news. But she had these cats. And this cat had a litter of 3 kittens. This was just when my daddy was fixing to go to Houston, Texas, and my stepmother was going to go to Dixon. So the cats didn't have to hunt for nothing to eat. My stepmother fed those cats like feeding a baby. You need to pay attention to this, because this is going on in this world today, and this is why the world's in the shape it's in right now. Fed those 3 cats by just like feeding a baby. Those 3 kittens never had to hunt, and that old cat never had to hunt for nothing to eat. Daddy goes to Texas. All the furniture's still left in the house. Everything's still left in the house. My stepmother goes to her brother's in Dixon and stays. Well, I'm still running up and down the road with a guy called Hooper McGee. He's making whiskey. So I'm working with Hooper McGee now, cutting cordwood with Hooper McGee and making whiskey at night. So I'm still in the whiskey business with another guy, not my daddy. And I'm in the cordwood business with another guy, not daddy. So I'm running up and down the road with Hooper McGee, and I'm still in and out of the old home place down there where I was raised. Every now and then, I went down there, and how come this story is coming about is I decided I wanted to mess a fish, and I knew where the gig was at the house. So I went down to the old house because I was living with Hooper McGee at the time. So I went down to the old house and got the gig. And when I walked up into the front door, now these cats slept in this box right beside the front door. Right, that's where I had a cardboard box there. I walked up the steps, opened the door, and guess what I saw? 4 dead cats. 4 dead cats. And the reason I saw 4 dead cats is those cats never had to fend for themselves. They never had to go get nothing to eat. They didn't know how to get nothing to eat. They did not know how to hunt for anything to eat. And the same thing is happening to kids today. Parents are allowing that. That's all I'll say about parents. But I'm telling you right now, that goes to show you, if you're not taught how to fend for yourself or help yourself, you will die. Unless somebody comes along and does it for you. But those cats laid right there in that box and died while there was no one there to feed them. That is, I'll never, ever, can ever forget that. That has stuck in my mind forever and ever and ever. When I walked in there, the mama didn't even go get nothing to eat. Mama laid right there and starved to death with those 3 kittens. Now, if that's not a shame, I don't know what is. But if you're not taught any better, you're going to do what you're taught. So if you're not taught any better, things are not going to be good. And things are not very good out there right now because of that kind of a thing. So anyway, Daddy comes back and he gets back in the same shape he was in. And then Daddy moves out from the house down there, and my stepmother and him get back together. They move out to a little town called Tennessee City in another house. And I'm still living with Hooper McGee and cutting cordwood, and he's carrying cordwood to Wrigley. And of course, Daddy's not getting any better, and he's too stubborn to go back to Texas and let my brother take care of him again. And he just wouldn't go back again, and I don't know why in the world he wouldn't, because he looked like a new man when he came back up here from that. So there was ways of treating the rheumatoid arthritis, to make you feel better and to get in better shape. So I'm going to have to close on this episode number 6 right here now, and we're going to make a little music for you, and hope you'll enjoy some of the stuff we do for you in our music. And Roger Ball and Gary Adams and me and Rita, we're going to lay it on you as best we can. Hope you enjoy it, and don't forget now, if you will, be sure to look on look on YouTube for us, and I hope that you'll hit the share button. I believe it's not the share button, it's subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button. I always forget the word. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and that will boost our ratings, and I would appreciate it very much. And again, Rita and I and Gary and Roger, we're going to just tear something up here, and hope you've enjoyed number 6. I believe this is episode number 6. So at this point, we're going to make our music, and we'll go from there, okay? Hello there. Hope you enjoyed episode number 6, and I certainly enjoyed doing it. We got couple more songs here we want to do for you tonight, and so hope episode 6 went good for you. Right now we're going to get Gary and Roger to help me out here on an old thing called On My Way Back to the Old Home, and that's what my story's all about. So let's get her done. Back in the days of my childhood, in the evenings when everything was still, I used to sit and listen to the ball sound right down that walkie-talkie hill. I'm on my way back to the old home, that road wide going up the hill, but there's an old light in the window that shined long ago I lived. My childhood rover, I had to leave my old home, for Dad and Mother called heaven. I've left in this world all alone. I'm on my way back to the old home, a road wide going up the hill, but there's no light in the window that shine long ago where I live. I inhaled the walkie-talkie, stands for spot in my memory. I'm on my way back to the old home, the light in the window I long to see. I'm on my way back to the old home, a road wide going up the hill, but there's no light in the window that shine long ago where I live. All right, on my way back to the old home. That's where I am. I'm on my way back to the old home, telling my little story. Rita, what you got up there?
Well, I'm going to do Love of the Mountains.
Key of what?
B.
Key of B. Oh, I got to move my tape over here. Key of B. That's a wild key, B.
And this kind of song fits into your story, too. Just, all the trees on the hillside.
That's right. You got that.
Everything that's talking about home.
That's right. All right, let's get her done, son.
Always looking up toward My mom and dad are resting there today. The burning of the green wood on the fireplace, the falling snow around the redbud trees, the branches of the laurel by the creek bed, and the rippling waters of the gentle stream. Now a bright moon is shining in the valley, and away it leans against the stack of hay. Two graves on the hillside by the cabin. My mom and dad are resting there today. Papa used to talk about the young days when he and Mama first settled down. He spoke about the love of the mountains that he and Mama shared together there. Now a bright moon is shining in the valley, and away it leads against the stack of hay. Two graves on a hillside by the cabin. My mom and dad are resting there today. My mom and dad are resting there today.
Very good. All right. I hope you enjoyed the music of Roger Ball, Gary Adams, Lonnie Jones, and Ray Shaver Jones. Episode number 6 was exciting, and I hope you have enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed the music. We'll see you on episode 7. Don't forget to push that button. All right. Subscribe to YouTube. Lonnie Jones' life story and what God's done for me.
Jesus died on the cross from a dogwood tree. He gave his life and soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again, for the blood shed that day was on the wood from a dogwood tree.